Thank you. This is the Old Young Ones. I'm your host, John Clark. With me as my co-host is Howie Weingarten. How you doing, Howie?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Great. I like frozen, and then it was too much energy. I feel like we could edit that into the appropriate response because somewhere you did the whole range. Really, you gave us your 0, you gave us your 10. You're doing fine. We are here to talk about Bomb. It is the 4th episode of season 1 of the Young Ones. Maybe the best episode of this season. We will get into it. But with us today is someone neither of us has seen in a long, long time, but somebody that was very important to our development. When I first did stand up at an open mic in Manhattan many, many years ago, these were the two gentlemen that went with me, got up on stage, and proceeded to do it a few more times. So Howie and we did it together. This is 2000. But the third person I met at the Museum of Television and Radio, where we took our job not very seriously. And he's been working in radio and television ever since. It's Andrew Torres. How are you, Andrew?
Doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me here. This show really meant a lot to me in my late teens, early 20s, and was integral to, the development of my insane sense of humor.
Well, when did you first discover the Young Ones, Andrew?
I would say, strangely enough, I was not watching it yet in college. I think right after college, right around 1994, 95 is when I became obsessed with it. I watched it. I got the commercial BBC video cassettes, and I was watching them over and over again. And to the point that when I went to London in 1995, I was determined to find the house. Now,
did you?
I did not. Now, for one thing, I was staying with a guy who just would not let me out of his sight. He wanted to just basically control what we did. And I was
it sounds like it got dark.
Well, no. It was fun. But what I did, I had a map. Now, mind you, there was no Google Maps. There was no internet. There was very, very basic, like AOL start. But as far as phones, anything like that, where you could just say, where is the house located? Nothing like that. So I had a Hagstrom of London, and in my room in his house where I was staying, I was trying to find a street, Codrington. And I did find a Codrington. And I thought, maybe that's where the house is. And it was sort of kind of on the rail route to downtown. I was staying outside of town, but I never got there. And I'm glad, because it would have been a waste of time, because as we all know, the house from season 2 on was in Bristol. And is very well photographed now and is all over the internet. I could have tried to find the house from Demolition, because that really was in London. And there's also a video of a guy going to visit that as well. But anyway, that's how obsessed I was with it.
Nice.
Yeah, we just found out today, speaking of locations, I just saw a post that said that the house from All in the Family, which was set in Astoria, and when I lived in Astoria, I went up and down the streets going, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. It was in Glendale, where Howie is from. Howie, did you know it was in your neighborhood growing up?
Nope, never, no idea. Probably passed it 100 times.
Yeah,
that's amazing. See, now
probably not on Hauser Street.
No.
See, now those were the days.
In this episode, we find out that the house is actually on 15 Credibility Street, which is something I wish they used more.
That is hysterical.
So let's get into this episode.
Yes.
As I said, I feel like this episode just ratchets things up. Like the first 3 had some great moments and had things I liked a lot. But this one, I felt like this is where it hit its peak. All the characters are on point. All the scenarios are played with the appropriate amount of time. They don't start to drag on. Every character acts in character. And basically, this is what the show is always supposed to be. A ridiculous premise happens, and they go in 4 different directions.
4 different directions.
And scream at each other.
Scream at each other.
Well, the pacing of this episode is really good, because none of the inserts, or I guess they called them cutaways, are too long. They don't go on too long. The cereal box is exactly the right length. The trying to think of the other ones now.
Dickie and Dino.
Thank you.
Dickie and Dino, I think, is going to be the entire episode.
Oh, that's true.
That was hysterical.
We'll get to that. It's later in the episode. Dickie and Dino, I feel like, has changed Howie Weingarten's life.
That is like...
He's been quoting this since 1993. And I actually got scared when I watched this one, and it came up. I was like, oh, no, this is the Dickie and Dino episode. We're never going to get past this.
Yes, it is.
Well, we're going to have to talk about that. I guess
when the opportunity comes up, it's Dickie and Dino.
Dickie and Dino. Yeah.
It's all about Dickie and Dino. And I never knew it was them.
Really?
That's the embarrassing. Yes.
You didn't know it was Nigel Planet.
I did not know it was Nigel and Rick for the longest time. I'm like, whoever they got to do that was, and I'm like, how did you not notice that? How did you?
That's my question to you.
I don't know.
We had sort of a different experience with that because I knew watching it in my early 20s, I knew it was them. It took me a minute on Nigel Planer because what I love about it, that playing a Dean Martin type is so opposite Neil, and it really is such a great.
It really works.
Great things. These guys could completely throw themselves into a different character, and it doesn't have to make sense, And
it doesn't. Why? But it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it was really well done. And what I didn't realize at first was who they were spoofing, because it actually took me a few years to really ingest other things like the Rat Pack specials and the Dean Martin specials, and that's really what they were doing. I had an idea they were doing something like that. But
yes.
All
right, let's go to
that comes later.
We'll have the rest of the night. If you see it get dark behind me and then get light again, it's because we haven't finished covering Dickie and Dino yet.
This could go on a while.
For this episode, for a show that's high energy and almost ADHD and punk, they really take their time in the beginning of this one. The first 10 minutes are just about them waking up, which I think is really fun. You get to live in the world for a bit, which is not something you get to do much with this show. They're constantly moving and jumping to another idea. But, first of all, they all wake up. Every time I watch it, I don't know why this is, but in Neil's room, there's a Marshall amp that's clearly made out of cardboard.
Yeah.
And they smell Marshall with a T. And every time I see it, I'm like, well, they're going to pick that up and smash that. Otherwise, you have the actual thing. They never do. It's it's just the third grade arts and craft project to make the prop in the room.
And that clock, you can see it's on a string. Neil's clock.
Oh, sure.
It just bends. It just falls over.
Yeah.
It just.
And the astrological chart, of course.
They sleep
before. In fact, that picking up the details of their different rooms, I think, is kind of great in establishing the characters too. Because Mike is in bed with a blow up doll, and
with his mouth just like the
and soundlessly.
They're both like this.
Yes, exactly.
They seem like a really happy couple. They don't seem like they're using one another.
No. If you're into latex, that's your girl.
Yeah, that's it. And did you see the shackles on Vivian's wall?
Yeah.
What are those? Chains or something? What exactly is going on there?
Well, that's the thing. Their characters are all set up, and I love when we see Rick, it's full close up. It's a
that's quite a mug he's got.
It's a close up that I am not willing to do right now. That's how close he is.
Do it.
No.
Do it. You got the do it.
You know the poem?
No, I don't do it.
Say it.
Pollution.
Oh, now you don't know what to say.
Pollution.
We have Rick's poem, which I think is the best poem he ever does in this.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It sets his character. He's so enamored with him coming up with this terrible poem.
Yes.
It's bad.
Yes.
And it just starts to unravel where he's like, are you coming to town or I coming to yours? I'm like, we've lost the complete thread of what this poem even is.
Can I do the ending?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're on separate buses, Pollution, but we're still using petrol bombs.
Yeah. And the bomb has nothing to do with anything other than when he says that, I go, well, that's the name of the episode.
Yeah.
And we've seen stock footage of a plane, which makes no sense at all.
No, makes no sense. And it also makes no sense that this thing crashing through their house and into their kitchen did not wake them up.
Yes. No, I love that. Yeah, at 2 p.m. Well,
2 p.m.
The thing I love, the logic of the hole in the floor, it only happens twice and nobody mentions it. Neil falls through the floor. And then later when we get to the tele inspector man.
Mr. Bastard.
Oh, the right
Mr.
bleeding.
Bastard.
Right bleeding bastard.
Nobody says anything about it. You could make an entire episode about that. But there's just this big red bomb blocking the fridge. And it is not mentioned. I looked this up. 10 minutes and 17 seconds.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's real. It's like watching the Titanic movie and it doesn't hit the iceberg until 2 hours in, you know?
Yeah.
Whoa, spoiler.
It's like Batman Begins. He doesn't put on the suit for like an hour.
You got to begin somewhere.
Yeah, but this thing, you're right. It is a good amount of time before it's even noticed. And I love also how, Neil, and I think you guys have mentioned this before, is kind of the mother of the house.
Sure.
He's the one. Lads, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it's time
we got
up.
That's pretty good.
Oh, thank you. No, I mean, no other member of that household would even think of saying, well, it's probably time we should, and again, he does the cooking and he's, if there is any character on that show who remotely has any kind of compassion at times, it's Neil. At times.
Yeah, because he's so self-pitying that
sure.
There are
totally
everybody gets it. Well, when the kettle explodes for again no real reason, he just says,
no,
it would rather explode than be used by me.
Right. That's right. If you wanted to talk about it, you should have said. One more thing on the poem, by the way. Rick Mayall, when he was discovered, this is the act he was doing. He was basically doing Rick in the clubs, as you guys know. He was doing I don't know if he was calling him the people's poet, but he would get up there and he would recite a poem. He's going to a poem about Vanessa Redgrave or something, and then get angry when the audience would laugh. You're like, Vanessa. What's that?
He said I think he was at Edinburgh. And it was, Edinburgh's got all these different things going on. So he was doing stand-up and he wandered into a tent where they were doing poetry. And everyone was so bad that this was just his parody of what he saw in that tent.
There's a great 10-minute interview on YouTube with Rick Mayall all about that. I forget, it's an English host. Forget the name of the host, but it's an amazing interview. About 10, 11 minutes. It's great. And what I didn't know is that he actually was one of the patrons in An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, he's in The Slaughtered Lamb.
Wow. I did not know.
I don't think he has a line. But
no,
he's like,
no lines.
But he's one of the guys in there. Yeah. Which is like, that's a year or two before the young one. So that's really young. It's like, Andrew, when we were doing stand-up, we knew all these comics who were like so happy to get extra work on something.
Yeah.
Like not have a line be in the background, but it was just a stepping stone to being in front of the camera. And I feel like that's what Rick was in American Werewolf London, which is the classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But from here we get to the argument with Rick and Vivian through the wall about the deodorant.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sliding up because you're going to talk about SPG.
And we see SPG.
Well, we will see SPG, but I love that Rick ends the argument with, if you use my deodorant again, I'm going to call the police.
Yes, I know. And what's great about that is, again, it underlines just what hypocrites these people are, because Rick hates the police. Rick thumbs his nose at the police. He does it later in the episode. And, to say that, if you touch my deodorant again, I'm going to the police. Again, and relevant today. We see kids like that everywhere, that have this tough front. And then, as soon as somebody comes at them with a crowbar, help,
call the cops.
Yeah.
So it's again, the timelessness and the relevancy of the show and of these characters and how well they're defined. So
for sure.
Yeah,
Rick,
and at this point, they're so well defined. And that well, Howie, you can talk about SPG now because SPG comes up.
Oh, He's just got a. I love because this is like there's like so many different versions of SPG. This is one of my favorite ones. This and the one with Bambi.
See him in this one. He's not just like
this one
a pile of puppets
of hair, and eyes and something like that. But he's just like, hey, I sound like a student's armpit. It's just like kind of. That's about 75%.
Surprisingly like the impression you used to do of Lemmy in college.
Alarmingly
like your impression of Lemmy.
It probably is. I shit you not. But it's just like SPG is hysterical in this episode.
Oh,
and
we'll get to that.
Like the most violent SPG scene I've ever seen.
I don't know. See, that's the thing. It's just like those scenes. I don't think you could do this comedy today because there'd be a lot of people who'd be like, "Yo, that's animal cruelty. You can't laugh at animal cruelty."
Oh,
and that's true. As you would never laugh at animal cruelty, of course.
But nobody would think that's an animal.
No,
it's an ugly, stupid ass puppet.
But trust me, there would certainly be some people in the comments who would say that, no doubt about it. And
so
another thing about the puppetry is, and I believe that I forget if it was the director or if it was Lisa Mayer who mentioned this. There's a terrific little show on YouTube of Making of the Young Ones. Where they talk to some of the people. Lisa Mayer, who of course was one of the writers, one of them said, you couldn't. The puppets were crude, of course, but you couldn't have them look too good because you sort of had to have a cheap puppet to match a cheap gag. You didn't want to have this silly joke and then have this really polished looking, puppet.
Henson level puppet.
Right, exactly. And I think it just adds to the character of the show of something that was done, in a hurry. I think they did one episode a week and in front of an audience. And I think it's the sort of bubblegum and scotch tape look really, really fits the show. You couldn't have anything that looked too polished in the squalor of that house,
Right.
So,
it fits the whole aesthetic and as we've been saying, really each week, this I feel like it's the perfect punk sitcom because it's stripped down, it's angry, it's fast, it's crude, and it gets in and it gets out. And we were saying very early in the show, that's probably why they only made 12 of these. Because even for a British show, it was a big hit. Mm-hmm. It was not a cult show on the BBC. It was a big hit, but after the second one, they were like, we're done. It's like the Sex Pistols didn't stick around to reunite.
Perfect example. Yeah. And if the Sex Pistols had reunited, you wouldn't catch that magic again. Probably.
Right. Well, they said that. I think Lisa Mayer said in that show, first of all, we could have done a third series, but how could we have really improved upon the second? But the bigger reason was if Fawlty Towers felt no need to make more than 12, why should we? Mm-hmm. And again, that's another great part of that group is that they really did have a reverence for what came before them, for Monty Python. And you can see it in the transitions, and we'll talk about that a little more. There's a very Python-esque transition from Dickie and Dino, and that's just one. But they really revered what came before them. I think even going back to the Three Stooges and the black and white stuff, I really believe. And that's wonderful. And that's something that's missing today, I think, with a lot of young comedy writers. They don't go back and do the homework and go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and take in all of this wonderful stuff that came before them. But I don't want to get on that soapbox. Just an observation.
Get on that soapbox.
No, but it's like it's something I've heard Mark Maron say. It's like a lot of people think comedy began with Mr. Show. Right. And it's like, I understand that's a watershed moment. But but it's a watershed moment, but there's so much before that.
But there's so much,
But speaking of the Three Stooges, I felt like this episode in particular has the most Three Stooges energy because you can see the structured bits coming. And what happens next is kind of one of my favorite moments because you don't see it much. There's a two-hander with Vivian and Neil that's like they do two separate bits and they're clearly constructed. The first one is just Vivian hitting Neil and setting that up.
Yeah.
And then there's this entire set. It's like a Hal Roach film with the lentils in the cabinet. It's perfect Three Stooges of them having a bad idea and following through the bad idea. And what I love most about this is Vivian is such a calm, straight man.
Yes. This is maybe the only time, at least off the top of my head, where Vivian actually tried to be helpful and helpful and cooperate with the member of the household that he arguably beats up on the most. For some reason, they sort of respect Mike, you know.
Yes,
but
Mike's the
but obviously, you know, maybe they're fooled by his whole, you know, ladies magnet act. But and by the way,
he has the most confidence of anyone there.
Right.
He's got confidence. And why is Mike wearing children's pajamas? You know, you would think that somebody, if he's as much as a ladies' man as he says he is, he'd have much more of a Hugh Hefner
smoking
type,
jacket.
You know,
Thank you. Yep.
Maybe because he's 5 foot nothing.
You know?
But that's what I love about him.
Those pajamas are hysterical.
He's 6 inches shorter than everyone and clearly 15 years older.
Yeah. And in college.
And he was the only, by the way, actor on the show. Everybody else was stand-up comedians.
Right, because it was originally supposed to be another comedian who had done a lot of Comic Strip Live and who plays the drummer in Bad News, one of the shorts on Comic Strip Live. But for some reason, they couldn't make his deal happen. So they hired Chris Ryan. And we talked about this. There's a lot of people like him because he's got this different energy. But I think he kind of he rounds out the energy in that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is doing a different thing.
I don't think we could have the show without Chris Ryan.
No, I don't
Absolutely not.
He's got some great lines in this one. The whole elephant riddle.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's
he
right.
is just like, he's just like, when he's like with Vivian, he's just like, you know, hey, he could have wrote this. He could have, you know, been better than Shakespeare. And Vivian's like,
yeah.
Well, just the whole thing. He's like, how do you get 5 elephants into a mini?
There's no
punchline. No, you chop them up, and then you chop them up, and then you put some in the trunk, and some in the back seat, and some in the passenger seat, and then just to get him out of the bathroom.
Exactly.
It was great.
Yeah.
And then when Viv comes out and he shakes all of the sand or the grit off of his sheet and talks about, you know, I've got the same problem
Vivian
with
being
me.
a straight man, where he's just like, he's like, without my spectacles, which I love because you never see him wear glasses.
Yes, exactly.
He's like,
not that a flea would be wearing
bits and fleas look the same in his bed, and Mike's just playing along. He's fine.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, the comedy act is really coming along, Viv." Thanks, Mike. And he shakes his head and goes off. You know,
Vivian's not as aggressive in this one, and I kind of
in the beginning.
Yes, but it's kind of like when
as it goes on, he starts.
It's kind of like when Animal gets tired. It's like fun.
Yeah,
it's just fun to watch.
More agreeable.
Yeah.
But my favorite part of Vivian in this episode, by far, he's just like, oh, the television license guy is here. What do we do? He's like, desperate times call for desperate measures. Vivian, eat the telly. And he's just like, I've been waiting for this forever. Oh my God.
That's the one part that's
fell on the fucking floor when that shit happened.
It's my favorite moment, and it's coming. But that's the moment where it crosses
oh my God.
into the Muppet Show. It's just that moment. It is
eat the
Muppet Show.
Eat the telly. I mean, just the most.
And then he's got the cord out of his
cords out of his mouth.
And SPG puts.
And I think that the one of the funniest facial takes, I mean, in the whole series is when the license man comes in and says, you know, accuses him of me.
Oh, you yobbo!
It's a toaster, but the look that he gives, just it's a telly.
We've been
you
saying
yamba or yamba or whatever he calls.
Yeah, let's get into it now because we're at the point where the telly detector man shows up, and it's a completely different episode for the 5 minutes. He's got a bizarre energy. He's like the beard and the bald head, and
he's just like nodding his head, just creepy.
He's like over caffeinated and angry.
He is creepy, but he's great.
It's a telly you yobbo. We've been
saying. I said yabba to him, yabbo.
And he goes, "Give me it back. I want to nick you." And he's got the plug hanging out of his mouth. It's great, and just everyone's in a panic, you know. And it's one weird thing I noticed is they switch telly and TV. Like I've always believed that British say telly, Americans say TV. but they do say TV a couple of times.
They do. And actually, we did actually skip past one when they all noticed the bomb. Yes. Now, remember, Rick, Viv sees it first because he refers, it's where he's putting ketchup on his cornflakes.
Yes.
Because he couldn't get
and then we have that cutaway you mentioned before.
The cutaway with the...
It's just long enough. It's not great.
Yeah.
But it's just there to show that this is a thing we do.
Right. And that actor has appeared in many cutaways in the series. And he was often paired with Stephen Frost. Yeah. But but then they discover, when they all discover the bomb and they run to the TV, we need information. And of course, Viv just wants to watch a show,
and there's a weird cut there, and we know a lot of these have been edited for content. Like some of the songs have been cut out on some of the DVD prints. But when they run over, and then Rick just goes, "There's nothing on," and I was like, "Was there a sketch that was cut out?" Because I've never seen one, so I don't think there was something in there that was later removed. But I'm wondering, was there something in there that was removed? Because it seems like the perfect time to do another cutaway.
Well, Lisa Mayer did note that they would often come away with so much more than they needed, and a lot sometimes did have to be cut to make it fit, But what I found interesting was that the test pattern that's on the TV is just sort of pasted onto the screen.
And Rick Mail just...
Yes, and when Rick goes
blocks it,
says, "Oh, useless," and when he goes to turn it off, the camera really quickly moves away from the TV so that you can't see that the test pattern's still on there after they turn it off. I love that.
It's only like 2 levels above what we would do with a video camera.
Exactly.
And the 3 of us have made many films, some of which you can find on YouTube, a lot of which you'll never see.
Yeah.
But there are moments where it had the level of our budgets.
Oh yeah, for sure. But they had such a volume of stuff that they had to get together in such a short period of time. And and Lisa Mayer said the BBC props department was just incredible in throwing all this stuff together. Everything from breakaway chairs but it was a lot, and it had to be done in a short period of time. And I just love that quality. And did you notice the fifth? I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Oh, no. Oh, I was going to say about the props. One of the things I've always loved is that when Vivian hits it with the sledgehammer, he chips the paint on the prop.
Yes.
There's a big white square on it. And then when it cuts back, it's
gone. Yes.
It's gone. Yeah. We went in with some paint in between and fixed it.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't reshoot the first take.
No. Did you see the sledgehammer? The sledgehammer is actually curved.
Yes.
That's right.
He's like, why won't this thing go off?
Why won't it go off, Mike? What do you want it to go off?
Who can tell?
I mean, it's great. Did you notice the fifth housemate? This is something that's been written about.
I have never seen the fifth housemate.
Okay.
And we haven't covered this, but apparently in season 1, there are certain shots where you see a fifth person sitting in the back that is never mentioned, is never noticed. There's no cut to them. But apparently there's supposed to be a fifth member of the house that just no one talks to.
Like long hair, kind of like Neil, but never speaks.
But it looks like The Ring.
It took me several times looking at this. I mean, I've probably seen this episode in my life a dozen times, and I never noticed it. And it's right when the camera pulls out just a little bit in order to get him in the frame. When Viv sets Neil up, said, "Oh, I learned a great trick. Stand there," and then whacks him with the kettle that exploded earlier.
Right.
The fifth housemaid is sitting in front of the bicycle, in front of Neil's white bicycle.
I'll have to look.
I have to watch that again.
And then
I missed it.
I've heard about this for years, and I've never seen the fifth housemaid in any episode. And I've heard the fifth housemaid is only in season 1. There are no appearances in season 2.
No, that's right. He never appears again. Yeah. I guess it was sort of the Easter egg, because later in season 2 they did the little frames, the little the quick frames that are So
the subliminal images.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll get to that when we get to season 2, but it almost looks like, which is the way I used to watch these, like VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Where it breaks down and you see what you had recorded over before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, that's why they started doing it. They became aware of how so many people were recording them. It's like, well, let's mess with them a little bit and get them to pause their machines.
You know what I've noticed about this episode?
Yeah.
This episode is funny because it's just like it feels like there's so much going on with the four of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is just because they have like so much material and so many ideas to get in, but correct me if I'm wrong, but this episode seems to have like the least amount of Alexei Sale than all the others.
You're right.
And
I don't know why that is, because I thought he was, from what he said, from the limited time that he was on screen, I loved him.
Well, he actually helps the story this time. He's not a distraction.
Right.
There's like he comes in for a story beat, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But
yeah,
so where we are now, they've noticed the bomb.
Yes,
but they're all immediately distracted by the daily detector guy.
Yes,
who is just unhinged. I often think of that. I know how to wait.
Yes,
and then he falls through. He falls through the hole in the ceiling and just points at everyone. And he goes upstairs. I guess that's where
to the toilet
to wait.
Oh, he's going to wait by the toilet. And when the telly comes out the other way,
you're nicked.
Oh, you're nicked. That's it. Yes.
He's a wonderfully creepy character. Played by Roger Sloman, was the actor. Who he was also the landlord on Bottom, and the blind man and heart attack man on Mr. Bean.
Oh yeah, so, right.
Yeah.
Wow. So okay. Yeah. He's good.
Just for the record, the fellow on the cornflakes box was Mark Arden. Also, they used a lot. But
Mark Arden and Stephen Frost were actually a comedy team.
That's right.
Stand up together
and appeared together a lot on this show. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see a lot of Stephen Frost and Blackadder because everybody you see on Young Ones, you will also see on
Blackadder.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Stephen Frost has that great scene in Blackadder 4 where Edmund's going to be executed. And he's the head of the firing squad, and he's so nice.
Oh, you soft bastard!
And he's like, are there any requests you have? Yes, could you pause between aim and fire, say 30 or 40 years? No, see, I'm a blabber.
No finesse, no.
It's such a beautiful performance that every time I've seen him, he did a lot of Whose Line Is It Anyway in the late 80s, early 90s too. So he's a big improv guy.
Yes,
great energy, like really warm kind of energy, almost a John Candy kind of energy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic.
And now when Rick, and this again goes back to the hypocrisy and the front that they put up. Now, when Rick finds out that that they have not paid for the license fee, he is into it. I'm a criminal. Yeah. That's amazing. He loves it. And then
I wrote this down. People who don't pay their telly license versus the Nazis. And I was watching this episode with my 10-year-old, and he goes, "How are the Nazis involved in this?"
That's great.
That's funny. It's good observation.
He's so into it until the TV, that authority figure comes knocking, and then he's scared to death.
And he tries to throw everyone under the bus, and
I'll get thrown in jail. I'll be raped.
It was the other three, not me. Such a coward with that brave exterior, that act that he puts on.
Oh yeah,
really,
Yep.
And
but
again, we all know people like that.
We know people like that.
Yeah. Rick is probably the most realized character, whereas Vivian and Neil are a little more stereotypical. They're a little more caricatures. Where Rick has a lot of facets, so you can tell this was a character he's been honing. And whereas whereas like Aid's character